Digital cryptography was so frowned upon that some early crypto enthusiasts had to smuggle code through shirts or tattoos. Much like Bitcoin, the eCash product began gaining incredible levels of attention from buyers. At the height of the hype, David Chaum was contacted by none other than Bill Gates. Gates wanted to integrate eCash into every copy of Windows 95. It's rumoured that he offered $100 million for the project. David Chaum declined the offer, and every other offer that came after that. According to ex-employees, David's stubbornness and paranoia made it hard for him to trust the intentions of those interested. He also assumed that there would be better offers around the corner. He wanted eCash to be perfect. He believed in the importance of his work. In 1996, he stated, quote, "The difference between a bad electronic cash system and a well-developed digital cash will determine whether we have a dictatorship or a real democracy." Due to infighting, David eventually lost control of DigiCash, and the company fell into the hands of external investors. DigiCash began pitching their products to banks, several of whom were interested, but the vast majority of banks at the time were conservative and would rather stick to lucrative credit cards rather than an experimental product. By 1998, DigiCash was bankrupt, signaling the end of the very first wave of digital currency. Before we continue, here's a quick word from today's sponsor, Discord. Discord is a place where our Cold Fusion community can get together and chat. Setting up the server was really straightforward and only took a couple of minutes. I've added separate chat categories for technology, business, finance, medicine, and future video suggestions. I've decided to do this because over time, I've noticed that I've received a lot of interesting emails from professionals in industry and just awesome people in general who tell me interesting stuff that's going on in the tech world. So I'm sure bringing all of you guys together will generate some interesting and great conversation. I've been meaning to create a Discord server for a while, so when Discord reached out to me, I thought it was perfect. So come over and have a chat. It's free and takes just 15 seconds to join. Check the link in the description to get started. It seemed like the world was just not quite ready for electronic crypto money. But this did not stop progressive thinkers from seeing potential in the idea. After all, it wasn't the idea that was bad, it was just well ahead of its time and had the added issue of having no strong leadership. In 1999, famous economist Milton Friedman even said that, quote, "An electronic cash was necessary for the newly found internet and was also a logical tool for limiting government overreach."
I think that the internet is going to be one of the major forces for reducing the role of government. The one thing that's missing, but that will soon be developed, is a reliable eCash, a method whereby on the internet you can transfer funds from A to B without A knowing B or B knowing A.
He would go on to say that the monetary supply and monetary policy should be set by a computer where it could not be corrupted by humans. In the mid-1990s, the market exploded with companies that were based around cryptographic money. They were all riding the wave of attention that DigiCash had generated. In 1996, even the NSA got in on the action. They published a paper titled, quote, "How to Make a Mint, the Cryptography of Anonymous Electronic Cash." They described their own, fairly impressive version of a cryptocurrency, but it proposed the need for a centralized bank to keep tabs on transaction records, going directly against the heart of the movement. The movement did continue, and before long, some intriguing ideas began popping up on message boards. Some of these ideas were very valuable to what would later become Bitcoin. B-Money, for example, was designed by University of Washington graduate Wei Dai. Published in 1998, B-Money was designed as a way to enable online economies to exist entirely free from outside regulation. B-Money was ultimately theoretical, and while popular, it never gained enough traction to become a reality. Other ideas within the online community were less helpful. Jim Bell's Assassination Politics essay, for example. In the essay, he proposed an encrypted currency system to be used by disgruntled citizens unhappy with their political representatives. Money could be anonymously donated to a pool until the amount was high enough for someone to accept the bounty and assassinate a politician. It was a concept that eventually led to Bell doing some prison time. In all of this chaos, the idea that stands out most in hindsight is BitGold, proposed by ex-DigiCash employee Nick Szabo in 1998. Nick had the idea that instead of a digital currency being a token that represents fiat money, the digital currency itself could be a valuable commodity, and it would be awarded to miners for completing cryptographic equations. Sound familiar? Where BitGold differs from past attempts was the complete distancing from any reliance on banks. Nick Szabo explains, quote, "I was trying to mimic as closely as possible in cyberspace the security and trust characteristics of gold, and chief among those is that it doesn't depend on a trusted central authority." End quote. If David Chaum's eCash was an early ancestor to Bitcoin, then BitGold was the missing link. Although it was an establishing building block for the future of cryptocurrencies, it was only theoretical and also flawed. For one, it had far less concern with privacy and also had some technical shortcomings when it came to mining. So along with B-Money, BitGold was never widely adopted. So then, despite all of its exciting progress, the cryptographic money community fell relatively quiet for a decade. Then, in August of 2008, the domain name bitcoin.org was anonymously registered. In October, a paper titled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, was posted to a cryptography mailing list, signed Satoshi Nakamoto. In this paper, Nakamoto presented to the world the fundamental outline for Bitcoin. As it stands, this paper started a cryptographic chain reaction that changed the course of financial history. Today, nation-states want to start their own digital currencies. The city of Miami wants citizens to be able to pay bills in Bitcoin.
To be able to offer our employees to get a percentage of their salary in Bitcoin, allows our residents to pay for fees in Bitcoin, and also would allow for taxes to be paid in Bitcoin. It also requests of the state legislature to make Bitcoin an acceptable currency for us to potentially invest in the future.
PayPal, MasterCard, and Apple Pay are now integrating Bitcoin. Tesla has bought $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin, and General Motors is contemplating putting Bitcoin on its balance sheet. Large financial institutions are now accepting exposure to Bitcoin. What separated Bitcoin from past attempts was the overcoming of the double spending problem. Unlike physical stores of value, digital money is simply data, and data can be replicated. And this allows the potential spending of a single coin multiple times. In the past, this issue was solved by involving a trusted third party to oversee transactions. In the case of eCash, that third party was banks. But to Nakamoto, that defeated the point, and much like Nick Szabo attempted with BitGold, the intention with Bitcoin was to create, quote, a system for electronic transactions without relying on trust. Bitcoin succeeded in overcoming the double spending problem by implementing an updated record of who owns what and at what time, as discussed earlier. This was the birth and implementation of the blockchain. With the double spending problem solved, the system was brought online and tested, and it worked. By 2009, Bitcoin was up and running. In July of 2010, it began trading at a value of $0.0008 US, and had risen to $0.08 by month's end. But of course, nobody really cared. Here's the very first Reddit post about Bitcoin in 2010. It was downvoted. The first reference of Bitcoin in TV history was the program Good Wife in 2012, when Bitcoin was at a price of $3.41.
I went online and I bought 1 Bitcoin last night.
Really? It's the future.
I don't know. It didn't feel real.
Real's gonna change. Just watch.
Here's a talk about Bitcoin to an empty room in 2013, when it was at $100. Literally nobody cared here.
What does Bitcoin neutrality mean? Neutrality in Bitcoin means being able to adopt Bitcoin in any culture, any language, any religion, any geography.
But there were some believers though. Chamath Palihapitiya shares his views on Bitcoin at $135.
Owning that currency and allowing water to find its level, particularly in the developing markets, is huge. And if you don't think that this thing is going to rip, when Brazil goes through a devaluation, when the Indian rupee continues to get crushed, when you have all of this money trying to get in and out of these countries where there's massive, political instability or monetary or financial instability, you're being naive. It doesn't matter what happens in the United States. It doesn't matter what happens in Japan. It doesn't matter what happens in the EU. It doesn't matter. It matters what happens in Argentina, in Venezuela, in Kenya, in Brazil, in India, in Russia, in China. And when you look at where all the activity is, it's in all of those markets.
Yep.
This will be born out of a people's desire to have unfettered access to capital.
Despite finally cracking the code to a working electronic cash system, Satoshi Nakamoto has mysteriously chosen to remain completely anonymous. On April 26, 2011, Satoshi Nakamoto would send his final verified email and vanish. Satoshi still owns 1 million coins which have never moved from his digital wallet. If the price of Bitcoin was to reach $197,000, it would make him the richest person in the world. So Satoshi Nakamoto, being such a mysterious figure, has fueled speculation and false claims. Who is Satoshi, and why did he vanish? We'll explore this, as well as some concerns about Bitcoin, in the next episode. So thanks for watching. I hope you learned a thing or two in this episode. Be sure to check out the Discord, and also follow me on Twitter and Instagram. My name is Dagogo, and you've been watching Cold Fusion. Cheers guys. Have a good one.
Cold Fusion. It's new thinking.